This is Mindset for Success with your host, Dr. Leslie Knudsen. Each week, she will interview women entrepreneurs to explore the unconscious psychological struggles they faced as they build their businesses and how they overcame them. Here's your host, Leslie Knudsen.
Hi, Connie. I wanted to welcome you today on my podcast, and I'm really excited to share your story with our listeners. I'm going to say a little bit about your background, which is super interesting. Connie Kwan is a management executive from Silicon Valley with 15 years of product leadership experience. She's an entrepreneur, advisor, and an active speaker on the topic of product storytelling. Her class, Storytelling for Startup CEOs and Product Leaders, have helped over 2,000 leaders, the majority of whom identify as female and minority, and help them building their story skills. She has founded 2 startups and helped many founders craft and deliver their product visions. She's a master of engaging different audiences through powerful narrative. Currently, she lives with her husband and daughter in California and enjoys partner dancing, snorkeling in tropical places, and camping in the great outdoors. So welcome.
Thank you, Leslie. Great to be here.
Connie, as you know, it takes a lot to be a successful female entrepreneur. And of course, business acumen is key. But we rarely talk about those psychological challenges that women often face to achieve that success. And I refer to those often as those negative, sometimes persistent thoughts that can create doubt and undermine success and destroy self-confidence, risk-taking, and sometimes even decision-making. I wanted to start with you a little at the beginning and ask you a little bit to talk to us about your path to become an entrepreneur.
My dad was an entrepreneur. He, along with the family, started a business in Canada, actually, in the 90s, building computers. And I had a front row seat to that journey. I would go to his office after school every day, and he taught me how to build computers. So that was my exposure to computers, actually. And I eventually took computer engineering. Because, well, one, I was competitive, and I liked it because it was the hardest one to get into, but also because of the exposure, I started coding early and liked the kind of instant gratification that you get. You code it, you run it, and you can see it happen in real time. So I studied that, and I think the entrepreneur bug has always been planted in me because I got to see him building his business.
Right.
And it became a part of me. And I really wanted to have that challenge. I enjoyed working in all aspects of the business. And that's probably why I ended up in product management, because product management is probably closest to starting your own business in terms of being understanding of all aspects of the business, because it's the glue. It's really the glue between engineering, between marketing, sales. It's understanding all the pieces of the business so that you can take a product to market. So from a entrepreneur perspective, that's probably the closest profile to it.
I know that you started one company in Canada when you were still, I think, in college. And then your second company has been in the last couple of years. Is that right?
Yeah, so my first business was with a classmate of mine, and we started building something for one of my dad's clients, actually. So he made computer hardware for them. Of course, they needed software, and at the time, this was in 99 maybe. All the software comes in a box, and you install it on a CD back then. And what they did was software that is a trucking company, And they wanted to be able to talk amongst, they had people on headphones every day talking to the truckers and saying, okay, this is the route you're going today. And it's very dynamic, actually. And they change their route depending on where the load is going to be. So they had these customer service people, basically, that are trying to communicate on the Excel spreadsheet. But right now they have to look over each other's shoulders to do it at the time. And they wanted an Excel spreadsheet that updates live, so that everybody's looking at the same spreadsheet, basically. So if you use Google Sheets, you know what I'm talking about. That's the technology.
For sure, yeah.
Back then. And they didn't have it back then, right? Excel Sheets is all separately installed in each computer. So my partner and I, we built that software. And so we basically had Google Sheets, 10 years before Google Sheets was built, off of Excel. But we didn't know the value of that creation. Like, we were still college kids. We were, studying. I had dreams about moving out to California. And so we didn't really continue that business. But if we had the right mentorship and the right kind of connections with people who would use a tool like that at scale, that could have been a really good business also. So, looking back, it's like, would have been nice to pursue that. But also at the same time, I had different priorities back then. I wanted to travel. I wanted to learn business. I wanted to move out here to California. But that was the start of it. And now I have a business teaching storytelling classes and also consulting with clients on product strategy. And it's a slightly different business. This one's more education. The world has changed, right? It's much more. You can create solopreneur businesses now. You can use services online to automate a lot of stuff that you would otherwise hire staff to do. So now I have a business that allows me to be flexible in my life and, automate a lot of the classwork, but also engage live with my students, because I enjoy that side of it. And that's the high value class, is that engagement. But the tooling out there is amazing. And for anyone who's starting business now, it's just, it's easier to do checkout. It's easier to do outreach. It's a lot of things are actually easier now to start your own business. And you can start with a very small crew and be able to reach customers globally. So it's a very interesting time for entrepreneurs.
Tell me something. The risk between starting the first company and your current company was the same, less, harder, easier?
Yeah. Interestingly, I think the opportunity cost, I should say, of starting the business, when I was in college, if my college had a startup incubation program, like a lot of colleges do now, and they had, identified my company and said, hey, you guys should pursue this, and kind of coach us through that. That would have been the time for me to start it, I think. I don't know if I would have wanted to, because I really wanted to move out and go see the world. So that would have been the trade-off. But from an opportunity cost perspective, it was lower, because I had nothing to lose. I don't have kind of another offer, if you will, that would have been really lucrative, right? Like, yes, I had offers to go start a job, but they were all entry-level jobs. Versus now, to go out on my own, if I think opportunity cost, hey, I could take this offer on my table that is significant, right? And so when you start a business, you're going to start at a lower income and build that up again. So it's taking a risk, saying, hey, do I trust my capability enough? Do I think this idea will work, that I can take that risk? And of course, you can always go back and take those offers, and that's part of like, hey, if this doesn't work out, I can go take those offers again. But, I set myself a couple of years back, right? And you set yourself a couple of years back in some ways, but in other ways, you've also grown. Entrepreneurship puts you on a growth path. So it's hard to say. It's like, what do you want out of life at the end of the day, right? Do you want those experiences? Are you trying to optimize for a lot of income? What are you optimizing for, right? Because you can't take all the roads. There's only one life to live, and you just got to figure out what you're optimizing for.
Would you consider yourself someone who hasn't always fit in?
Yeah, I would say that. I immigrated from Hong Kong to Canada when I was 11 years old. So in Hong Kong, I felt like I was pretty popular in school there. And
Mm-hmm.
moving to Canada changed that because
Mm-hmm.
I the personality necessary to be popular there is different than the one here, than the
For
one in
sure.
North America, right? Different culture. And of course, I'm still struggling with the language. It's just hard to imagine being the popular kid when you're just joining the group, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I did grow up kind of feeling out of place, right? I moved to at the time, a lot of people moved from Hong Kong to Canada. Most of them moved to Toronto, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't move to Toronto. I moved like an hour's out from Toronto, like a smaller,
Mm-hmm.
not town, but it's a suburb.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like one of two Asian kids
Mm-hmm.
in school.
Mm-hmm.
So the other
How were you able to handle that?
you know, actually, innocence is bliss in some ways. I did not understand a lot of. I could write English really well. I was writing at a level beyond my years at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to an English immersion school actually, but
Mm-hmm.
they didn't really focus on the speaking side of the language.
Mm-hmm.
So my speaking was terrible. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
barely understanding. They were speaking super fast, and I could catch maybe 20%, and I knew there were kids making fun of me, but I didn't know what they were saying. So
Did
it's
did
kind
it ever did it ever impact you in terms of being doubtful of your capabilities? I don't know, to make friends or to be successful in school?
I actually became a really good chameleon as a
Mm-hmm.
as a result of moving, and I could blend into a lot of environments. In fact, um, when I went to college, we had a co-op program, and every 4 months we would go. You would go to school for 4 months, then you would go work somewhere for 4 months, and there were a lot of that's one of the first ways I got out to California is I actually
Mm-hmm.
ended working at companies in California and falling in love with the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So I, um, I was able to kind of pick up the environment really quickly because that was the skill basically I was trained to do. Is you get
Mm-hmm.
dropped, you get just airdropped into a new place with a
Mm-hmm.
language you sort of understand, with people that have different culture, and you just got to figure it out. You sink or swim. So
Was
that's an important skill that I had an opportunity to learn as a result of this experience.
in Hong Kong, did you have that skill, or you think you developed it later when you came to Canada?
I think that was the turning point of developing that skill.
Mm-hmm.
Because in
Mm-hmm.
Hong Kong, I was in the same school. I had
Right, obviously, yeah.
kindergarten was different, but like I was in the same environment for many years, for four or
Mm-hmm.
5 years, and you don't need to, right? You speak the
Mm-hmm.
language,
For sure.
you don't need to. You learn things when you have to. That's kind of
Right,
ultimately
right, for
how it comes
sure.
down. And being forced into a new environment suddenly puts you in a situation where you're like, okay, well, I gotta watch people and their body language and understand what's happening. I don't quite get the verbal language yet, and then
Mm-hmm.
you make
Pay
some new friends.
attention to the details.
Hey, pay attention to detail. You make some new friends. I remember being on the phone with a friend of mine. Also teenage girls, right? So you're on the phone constantly,
Right.
hold, holding up the only line in the house back then before cell phone.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we were on the phone for 3 hours, and
Mm-hmm.
just crazy because she was like I could walk to her house, so it's kind of. But we were on
But
the
you
phone
got
for
your
3 hours.
English lesson in for the day.
Yeah, it actually was. It actually was. I wasn't thinking about it that way, but it really was.
Mm-hmm.
She was forgiving. Like I would say wrong things, she would correct me, and we were just
Mm-hmm.
hanging out with friends. But that really was my training ground.
Mm-hmm. Do you consider yourself someone who thinks outside the box, maybe even breaks the rules at time, expects options and diversity? And if so, did it ever take you too far outside the box?
Yes, yes, absolutely. When people ask, do you want A or B? I'll always say, can I have both? or is there a
Mm-hmm.
C option?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right. Right.
So I kind of refuse to accept what's there, what's on the surface, because
Mm-hmm.
I have different contexts to draw from, right?
Mm-hmm.
The rules are different in different. I think if you grow up in one culture, one society, which